All right.
Okay.
So, has everybody arrived, Suzanne?
Did Glenn come back?
Yes, no, we're all in
Oh,
position.
We're all here.
You're off my screen, Glenn. I can't see you.
We're recording and everyone's in. Off you go, Kelly.
Okay, off I will go then. Thank you, Suzanne. Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you all very much for joining us today for this webinar, where we will talk a bit about the funding guidelines that have just been released for Round Tahi. A lot of people may be watching this recorded because we're in the middle of a bit of a holiday season. So if you are, welcome, and thank you for watching this as a recording. We hope it entertains and inspires you. I think we've still got a few people joining. It looks like number 28 has just arrived. So we'll chat for a little bit longer before we get cracking. Perhaps we can go to the next slide and I can just outline the areas that we're going to cover in this webinar. We're joined by many members of the funding team, as well as Suzanne Despong from our communications team, who will be managing questions and actually just managing everything. So if you have any pātai, you can put them in the chat and we will answer them as we go, and we will also answer any more at the end. So don't be shy. I'd like to introduce some members of our team. We've got Rebecca Tang from our business affairs team who's here, as well as Glenn Asmar, Gabrielle Thomas, and India Framo, who are from the funding team, which is where I am from as well. We've hit 30. That feels like a good milestone. Today, we're going to talk through the guidelines for Round Tahi as they pertain to non-fiction, scripted, the screen production rebate, development, tamariki content, rangatahi content, industry capability and discoverability, marketing and publicity for creation content, some more details about the deadlines for the funding rounds, and our new or soon to launch NZ On Air portal. So those are the things we'll cover. As I say, if you've got any pātai, put them in the chat. And Suzanne will manage those and we will do our best to answer them for you. So, shall we get started with non-fiction?
Kia ora koutou, I'm Gabrielle. First, details about the non-fiction for this round. We've allocated 9 million approximately for non-fiction in Round Tahi. And we're expecting to see broad reach general factual as usual, and also expecting to see documentaries, podcasts, national event coverage, comedy panel shows, unscripted comedy shows, reality shows, and part financing of feature films we also will do, which is supported by the Film Commission. New to this list is reality shows. We will be accepting applications for reality shows in this round Tahi. That will be the only round that we'll be accepting them in this financial year, and that will be reassessed for the next financial year. So at this stage, this is the only round for that. Not on this list of things that we are expecting in this round that we'll be accepting in this round is journalism, which we've specifically called for to come in round Rua later in the year. That doesn't mean that we won't be accepting applications for documentaries or web series that are sort of journalism adjacent. When we say journalism, we're talking about current affairs series that come in for annual funding, or we're talking about kind of specific types of news content that we also fund. If you have an application that you are not sure if we would describe it as journalism or not, then just feel free to get in touch. You can email me or call me, or you can email the funding email, which I'm sure we'll put up later in the webinar. I'm sure you all know how to get in touch with us. And for all these types of nonfiction, we will be prioritising this around larger scale projects, as you can see, and also prioritising local formats over international formats. That's for all of these things. There is more information about all of that in the guidelines. Or if you have questions, as we said, you can put them in the chat now, or you can hold off until the end if you have more questions about this. Or as always, you can email us, get in touch after this if you have questions that you don't think of until later, or you want to ask something specific to your project.
So I guess it's me next. Kia ora koutou, I'm Glenn Osmar. So I'm here to talk about scripted. As with non-fiction, we've got up to 9 million being allocated for the round. For Tahi, we are focusing on larger scale projects, tiers 1 and 2 in our scripted strategy, that are seeking funding between $1 and $3 million. As with previous rounds, we encourage applications that are intending to access the screen production rebate and or have co-production finance. Given the highly contested nature of our funding, we are keen to make our funds go as far as possible, and being a co-funder of a spur project or a co-production means that we can support a greater number of projects of scale that would not be possible if we fully fund drama series of a scale that we used to. As with recent rounds, we want to be last-in funders, and with the finance plan in place, spur projects typically have 6 months to close their contracting after funding's been approved. So you need to come in with that all in sorted out, basically, even though we know that you won't necessarily have got that signed and sealed. We're looking for applications in all genres, including drama, comedy, children's, and feature films that are seeking NZFC support and have the support of a local platform. As with other funding types, the level of platform contribution will form an important part of our business case assessment. And we appreciate that all platforms are facing a difficult fiscal environment, but expect they will make appropriate contributions depending on the scale of projects and the level of public funding being sought. And finally, we still encourage scripted projects to consider incorporating local music in their productions. We expect that if you're applying for sync licensing funding, that there will be a minimum of 80% New Zealand music. Sync licensing is not available for non-fiction projects at this stage, just because of the call on our funding. Once sync licensing funding is approved, it will be ring-fenced in the budget, and also we can't approve sync licensing retrospectively. I think that's me for scripted, but as Gabriel said, contact us in all the usual ways if you have questions.
Glenn, I'm not sure if you did cover this off, so apologies if you did, but Nikki's just asking if the local funding precludes projects that seek international territories.
Not quite sure what she means. I think if, like for spur projects.
Nikki, if you're able to join on that.
Yeah, just leap in and qualify. I mean, we fund projects that will be distributed internationally, but primarily our funding is for the local audience. And as a cultural intervention agency, we expect it to reflect New Zealand culture and identity. So if we're funding it, it should be about New Zealand. It should have a screening in New Zealand, but it certainly can be distributed internationally as well.
No, that's fine. Sorry. My question was actually for an unscripted project, so that's I've kind of jumped ahead in the initial slide. But actually now we're talking the music sync licensing, so it's got to be 80% local music, but you have to sorry, what was the last point on that? Is it 80% local music qualified?
It can't be retrospective, so you can't get funding for a project and then come in afterwards and seek sync licensing.
Oh yeah, fair enough. That's cool. Thank you. I'll ask my unscripted questions later. It was just like the general slide that I was asking about. Thanks.
All good. Cool.
Oh, I think I'm next.
I think we have another question though that might be worth
Okay, I'm not
tackling.
next.
Oh, well, you could answer the question. It's about short films. And we really don't fund short films in particular. There are some projects that we fund that are short film based, some initiatives, but anything that's coming to us for funding needs a local platform. So if there was a short film with a local platform, possibly, but that doesn't really happen. Liam, did you have any more questions about your question that we can answer?
No, that's totally fine. Thank you. Can you just when you say local platform, what do you mean again?
So some local platforms are what we might traditionally have considered broadcasters, like TVNZ, TV3 for Kāta Māori, Sky, but they also have on-demand offerings as well. So it's not just about linear broadcast. And any other sort of local platform that we recognise has a sizable audience and has commissioners for New Zealand on-air funding. So that includes RNZ, Stuff, NZME, the spin-off. Does that help?
Yeah, totally. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There are a couple of initiatives run by some industry bodies that do short films as a sort of industry development kind of a program, and we fund those, but you'd want to speak to the organisers of those projects about short films would probably be the way to do it. Okay, shall we move on to the rebate then? Rebecca, take it away.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Rebecca. I will be covering some key info for those seeking New Zealand on-air funding to finance projects alongside the 40% New Zealand screen production rebate, or what we call SPUR. And this rebate is administered by the New Zealand Film Commission, so more specific questions you have in terms of meeting the criteria and the threshold can go to them. I think their incentives teams will be best placed to answer those questions. But for this round, we are accepting both scripted and non-fiction projects seeking to access the SPUR. And to be a rebate project, as mentioned before, you'll need to meet the New Zealand screen production rebate criteria, which includes having 25% non-government funding, including 10% market attachment. So that includes your license fees, distribution advances, and sales advances. We prefer to prioritize projects that have pretty much a set in finance plan, and we'll prioritize projects where we are last in funding. So it will be very unlikely for us to prioritize projects where there are finance gaps involved. So we'll be looking for letters of offers from other financiers supporting your finance plan, and overall we will be assessing your application based on the cultural value balanced with the strength of your business case and the overall mix of the round. And for each rebate project, funding will be capped at 3 million, and if you intend to request over this amount, you will need to discuss and get prior approval from our co-heads of funding, which are Kylie and Glenn. That's me.
Kia ora everyone, my name's India, I'm up next. In Round Tahi, we are accepting applications for supported content development, so you must have platform support and co-investment. Another thing that we've added this round is we may fund multiple phases of development simultaneously, but in this case, you'll have to have very strong platform support. Yeah, there's further information in the guidelines, but this is an area that a lot of questions do pop up. If there are any coming through in the chat now, tell.
Not at this point, India.
Not at this point.
But do pop them in if you have them for later.
Okay, let me carry on, because I'm also going to chat about tamariki content, which is targeted at kids under 15 years old. So we have 4 million allocated in this round. Applications must have local platform attachments, which is particularly important for tamariki content, as these platforms are qualified to provide commissioning oversight. And also their internal promotional capabilities help to aid discoverability. And these applications should be tailored for multiple platforms and have well-defined strategies for engaging the target audience.
India, just to interrupt you, sorry. Nikki was just asking, I think, from the slide previous about whether that's local or international platform support.
I'm assuming that is to do with
Or
rebate.
both. Like, is it both? Because obviously some of this qualifies for the rebate. So
Yes.
if you've got an international platform but not a local one, like how does that work?
There's
Yeah.
two parts of your question. So first, to access New Zealand on-air funding, you'll need a local platform attached because you'll need to reach the New Zealand audiences. But in order to reach the rebate threshold, that's where international platform support can potentially come in to allow you to reach that 10% market attachment.
Yep, no, that's cool. And what about if it's your own platform? Like what's the qualifier for a platform in New Zealand?
We will go through a process where we will look at the audience reach of the platform, and then we have a list of platforms that we recognise as local, like New Zealand commissioning platforms. I think Kelly might be able to provide some more context on that as well.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, if that's right. We've got platforms that we recognise for New Zealand on-air funding. So if you have got a platform that is yourself, I think I would recommend that you come and have a chat with us, because it's extremely likely that your platform is not one that we have recognised for New Zealand on-air funding in the past. There are some, depending on the type of project, there's a possibility that your platform, if it's got a large local audience, could be appropriate, particularly if there is a recognised local platform as a secondary platform, but it will really depend on your project. So maybe, Nikki, you want to set up some time for us to talk specifically about
that's
you've got in mind?
I definitely don't have a recognised platform, so it's fine.
Okay. Yeah. But for everyone, I think it's a really good question. I think for anyone who's not sure if their platform quite qualifies, please come and have a chat with us, because we wouldn't want you to go quite far down the path of preparing a totally awesome application only to find that it doesn't really qualify for our funding. And this has become a bit more of an issue because we're in an environment where there are more platforms around than there used to be, and some of those aren't local. And when New Zealand On Air was established, nobody anticipated that platforms that are reaching New Zealanders wouldn't be inherently local owned and operated platforms. So we're in a bit of a different environment, and or that New Zealanders would be watching things that weren't from local platforms was never really anticipated either. But the thing to know is you do need a local platform that is recognised by New Zealand On Air for our funding, and that will be based on the size of its audience of local viewers.
I'm wondering too, Joe Johnson, you've got a few questions there in terms of platform support as well. Are you wanting to jump in there now?
Go ahead, Joe. It looks like these questions are to do with development as well, I think. I wonder if Joe's still on there.
That's what I'm just wondering too. Yes, I think Joe's there. Or we can look at that at the end if you like, unless you want to cover that off now, Kelly.
Maybe we could back up the truck to the development slide, because I think some of these questions might be ones that other people have as well. That's okay if your audio isn't working. So the first question is platform support required? Yes, it is for any development applications in this round. If a project only has co-producer support, will that still be eligible? I think no, you're going to need a platform to be attached to your project, which is them saying, we support it at the development stage with a view to hopefully supporting it if it was to go into production and then be available for transmission. So you would need that support. And if by support you mean investment, it would need both a platform behind it alongside you as a producer and that platform to be putting in an appropriate amount of money into that development as well. Is there a per project funding limit for New Zealand On Air's contribution? Well, with development, we've tended to fund around the 10 to 35K mark. We are also open to people putting up a strong case for why they might need more for a multi-phase development, and that is mentioned in these guidelines. But we do expect that the platform is contributing ideally equally to that or significantly, or hey, maybe more than us. So you'd want to have, if you're wanting to come in with a multi-phase development approach with a larger funding request of New Zealand On Air, you would want that application to be very robust about what you are going to do in each phase, to have significant support from your platform, including co-investment, so that we know that this larger investment of ours would actually likely result in something that ends up on screen in production, but also that is really, really high quality. Maybe Joe, you could let me know if I'm answering these questions well enough for you. Co-producer, is the expectation that the platform New Zealand On Air and the producer will jointly and equally fund the development? I think I've covered that. What's intended to constitute a phase of development. So as an applicant, you would want to define what's that next stage of development that your project requires, what needs to happen to get it ready for that, and what the time frame is that you're going to do that in. That would probably constitute a phase. It could be storylining, a first draft of scripts and a certain number of them, and so on and so forth.
There's also a further question there about whether a project in the development round with the intention of it being submitted in the co-fund round be eligible. Kelly.
I can take that. So we run the co-fund with Te Māngai Pāho aligned with our round rua each year, which is the next round after this. If you've got something that's a co-fund project, the best thing to do is to bring it into the co-fund at the development stage as well. So if you could do that and submit it to the co-fund in around our round rua, that would be ideal. If there's a timing reason that's not feasible for you, I'd suggest you get in touch and we can discuss it. But the best approach if you're looking for the co-fund is to bring all your applications into the co-fund at each stage. Take it away, Glenn.
Sorry, I was just going to add, Joe, I think you may have a situation possibly where you've got an international co-production partner and may not have a platform. I think, as Kelly said, we would require a platform support coming into this round, but they may not be in a position to contribute. But if you had the financial contribution from your co-production partner, that might do. But give us a call and talk about
it. Do we have another question from Nikki about cinema, whether cinema is a platform, which I think is a great question. New Zealand On Air is focused on what was traditionally television, but the Film Commission is really there for films that have cinema release. So that is not part of the platforms that we recognise. Sometimes we contribute minor funding to films that have a local platform as well as cinema release, but cinema release would not qualify as a platform for our funding. And just to add to that, the requirement for New Zealand On Air funding is free-to-air audience access. So it's wide access to local audiences. Okay, so maybe we'll go back to tamariki. Did we finish that?
I think we did. Who's up on the rangatahi kōrero?
That's me.
Oh.
I feel like we've had enough of me. Rangatahi content. So for us, that's defined as content for audiences aged 15 to 24 years. In this round, we've got about 1.5 million available for rangatahi or youth content. For these applications, you can have a local platform, and we really encourage our local platforms to support rangatahi content. We recognise that our youth audiences don't necessarily consume local content in a more traditional way on our platforms. So it might be that your program needs to be tailored for multi-platform distribution in order to reach that youth audience where they are. It's possible also to have a YouTube first rangatahi project or social media as part of that distribution mix. And again, that should be informed by really, really good understanding of that audience that you're aiming for and how they watch content and enjoy it. If you are going to have an application that doesn't have a local platform attached, this is one area where we are willing to assess those applications and consider them. And again, it's because we know that our rangatahi aren't always consuming the platforms that might be local. So if you want to do that, you've got a higher bar to reach because we acknowledge the work that commissioning platforms put in around legal oversight, broadcast compliance, health and safety, as well as the creative oversight that commissioners provide. So if as a producer, you're able to submit with your application really robust plans for how you would handle that legal oversight and the creative oversight part, then you can bring an application in for rangatahi content that does not have a local platform attached. But make that really, really clear and well defined, and it might be wise to have a chat with us about that before you put your application in. As well as that, because we know that this audience can be quite fractured across a number of non-local platforms, you should have a very well-defined distribution and marketing plan with your application that talks about how you know you can reach the rangatahi audience that you're aiming your project at. Any questions about rangatahi content? It looks like we've got more about development, which is awesome. We might have to come to those at the end. Is there a preferred budget parameter for projects in the rangatahi round? Well, no, but we've got 1.5 million available in total. So if you've got the killer $1.5 million rangatahi project that can take all of the putia available, then bring in a very, very strong application. But it might be that it's, we're looking to fund 2 or 3 at that level. It's really going to depend what else comes in and what the requirements are. But overall, when it comes to budgets, we encourage you to tell us realistically what your project will cost, because we don't want people working for in unsafe ways or for really, really low rates that are unsustainable. So just be realistic about it. But again, if you've got any concerns about whether you're meeting the mark, you can talk to us. Another good thing to do is look at what the cost per minute is of the content that you're proposing to produce, and just see if that feels in line with other projects that have been made locally. And if it's very, very high, then you might be able to address that in your application and talk about the reasons why and make a justification, or you might feel like it might be a bit out of step and adjust accordingly. Can we apply for development for rangatahi content without platform support? Joyce, you can do that in Roundtahi. I love a question with a quick answer. Any more rangatahi pātai before we move on? Oh, we're moving on.
Okay, we've moved on. Cool. So in this round, we're accepting applications for both disability and capability aspects of our industry support mahi. Discoverability applications cover our sponsorship of industry awards and conference events, while capability is for skills development initiatives of industry professionals. These projects cover music, screen, and to a lesser extent, the games industries. There's a link to the guidelines for this funding on the slide. If you can't find it there, just email me and I will flick it to you. Discoverability and capability funding is a relatively small amount of putia compared to our scripted and non-fiction funding. So our approach has been to co-invest with other industry guilds and bodies rather than be majority funders of initiatives. Also, to maximise the efficacy of these investments, we generally prefer to work on a coordinated national basis rather than look at individual regional applications. If you've got any queries, give me a call. Next slide, unless there are questions now.
No questions.
Excellent.
That's me, marketing and publicity. So in recognition of the fact that the discoverability of the projects that we fund is very, very important. We want New Zealanders to be able to find and enjoy your great content. We do expect applicants to include lines in their budget for making marketing assets for their project and for the promotion of it. So you can include a marketing plan with your application, and any putia that's in your budget for marketing and publicity is ring-fenced in your budget and must be used for that purpose and not for anything else. We do have discoverability campaigns that we run, and we have an agency called Contagion that runs these campaigns. When you apply, you can opt in for your project, if it is successful in gaining production funding, that it could be considered for a campaign run by Contagion. If you feel that's right for your project, then tick it, but there are some for whom that doesn't feel like the right approach, and that might be because you feel that you can run your own. So if you wanted to run your own marketing campaign, you can apply to do that, and again, that is a box you can tick on the application form. If you want to go down that route, then you should include a really fabulous marketing plan and a budget for running it your own campaign, and a good justification for why you are the right people to run this as opposed to an external agency or somebody else. That's kind of it with that, but there may be questions. Anyone got any marketing and publicity questions?
Not at this point, I don't believe. Oh, no, someone's saying we have to use Contagion.
Oh gosh, no. There's a really small number of projects that get a Contagion campaign. So in your application, there is a box that you can tick to opt into being considered for a Contagion marketing campaign, and a small number of projects will be selected for that. You do not have to opt in to being considered for a Contagion marketing campaign.
Just waiting to see if there are any more questions, but if not, so the timeline around this round, we can 24th of April, the applicant information webinar, tick that off. We're already there. The 1st of May, next week, next Thursday, the funding round opens. You can start putting in applications from then. As we are just going to talk about in a minute, we have got a new portal and all the applications will be coming in through that. So I would strongly urge everyone, if you are not already registered, do that sooner rather than later if you're intending to put in an application in this round. Do not wait until the deadline on the 22nd of May. If you try and register for the portal on that day, you will miss the deadline. The deadline is at 4 p.m. on the 22nd of May. 4 p.m., not 5 p.m., which it always is, but there's always one. and we will be strict about it. So listen up for some information in a minute about the new portal. And if you have any questions about that, there's a separate email, a portal email that you can email in and ask your questions about that. And then the decisions for this round come out on the 1st of August.
So application limits. While we love to receive and read your creative proposals, we only have a limited amount of putia for the year. And we look to spread that reasonably across our 3 funding rounds. This means that the funds in any round are constrained and invariably highly contested. So we therefore limit the number of proposals an individual producer can submit in each round, as well as capping the number of applications platforms can support into the round. As noted here on the slide, producers have got a maximum of 4 applications, 2 applications per category. Platforms 10 applications, which exclude tamariki and returning series. In having these application limits, we want producers and platforms to focus on their best projects and not just chuck things in and hope that it sticks, because we don't have the putia for that. It also means that we aren't swamped and have a reasonable number of applications to process and can give submitted applications the consideration they deserve. We know that it's not an insignificant amount of mahi and cost to submit applications, so you really want it to be able to be read by us properly. If you think you've got a strong case for an exception, i.e. you want to submit 3 non-fiction applications in a round, then contact us and we will talk through with you what your request is. We're not unreasonable. But we're still cognizant of wanting to keep the round as fair and contestable as possible.
Just a question here, Glenn, asking if tamariki and rangatahi fall into the scripted and unscripted for these limits.
Tamariki don't. Rangatahi, I'm not sure, Kelly, if we've actually come across it before.
No, we haven't. We haven't had people exceeding that limit, but
no.
If you've got...
I mean, it's a relatively small amount of putia, so I would think, I don't know. We're making up policy as we go, which is not always the best way to do policy.
If you're not sure, talk to us. It's probably the best advice.
Yeah, we'll talk about it after this.
Yeah. But tamariki is unlikely to, it would be separate, and yeah, we'll talk about it after. But you should be fine with 2 tamariki projects, for example.
Yeah. Okay, portal. Just 1 moment, caller. So we've moved, as Gabrielle said, we've moved our finance and application systems to a new portal that will enable an end-to-end process for funded projects from application to submission of drawdown and payments. For producers with a live contract within our system, you should have received an invitation to confirm your registration in the new portal. If you haven't or are a new applicant, then you can just go to the portal and register. And as Gabrielle said, I would recommend you do that sooner rather than later. And also, as Gabrielle mentioned, we are holding a webinar on the new portal next Tuesday at 3 p.m. So if you're feeling uncertain about registering or uploading applications, I would definitely sign up for this. The webinar will be recorded and will be available to view on the website if you can't attend in person. So yeah, come and see us again next Tuesday.
There seem to be 2 questions I think we haven't covered off, and I think they're both from development. One was in relation to multiple development phases, asking, will phase 1 be assessed by New Zealand On Air before phase 2 is approved?
No.
Right.
I think you're going to get the funding up front. Your application will tell us what the phases are, and you'll go through that work. But the funding will be drip fed as you do those phases, and we'll expect deliverables, but not necessarily review it or assess it ourselves, because that's not our role. We do not have an editorial role.
Right. And Nikki Locke is asking too, how does this work in with Toi Mai? Is there
I
an
think
expectation?
that was
Yeah.
to do
Okay.
with this cat probably,
Sorry. Yep.
with regards to training. We don't actually. Short answer is no. And that's really because our focus for capability investment is around existing industry professionals rather than people entering industry. So that's why we tend to collab with people like Script to Screen or the Writers Guild or the Directors Guild, whoever, so that we're actually looking to upskill people rather than provide them with necessarily an entry into the industry. I know that's a gap, but we only have a limited amount of funding, so that's kind of our focus.
Any further questions? Now's the time.
Well, if you don't have any more questions, you can get in touch with us at the funding@New Zealand On Air email address, which is it is read by real people, and we will reply to you. So don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you want to discuss a potential application into this round. But if you have any more questions, as Suzanne says, now is your chance before we wrap this up.
Nope, not seeing anything coming through, Kelly.
Okay. Thank you all so much for joining. We've had a really good turnout, and whether you're watching this live or recorded, we hope it was helpful to you, and we look forward to receiving your applications. Thanks, everyone. Ka kite.